Welcome back. So now we're ready to start putting an actual campaign together. Now that we understand types of marketing and new versus existing customers and our marketing pie, we're now ready to start putting a campaign together. Now, in your workbook here, we talk about, the first thing it talks about is the campaign flow, and I'm going to talk about that in this first part of the video. Before we actually jump into that, I wanted to skip ahead to page 8 on the workbook. Page 8 talks about the 6 core ingredients that go into, or core components that go into every campaign. You've got here your ideal customer, your core offering, specific problem, headline, offer, and copy. Now, the reason I want to talk about these before I talk about campaign flow is you really need to understand your ideal customer and the core offering that you're focusing on before we can sort of understand the campaign flow. And to give you an example here, campaign flow talks about what are the steps someone has to go through in order to get to the point where they're either making a sale, they're buying something from you, or they've taken the action you're looking for. Now, if you have, let's say, a $30,000 product that you're trying to sell, if that person has never, the person you're advertising to has never had any relationship with you before, to get them to make a purchase of one print ad is going to be pretty unlikely. You might have to get them to request an information brochure. Then after they do that, you might have a phone conversation with them. From that, you might have a face-to-face meeting or two before you make a $30,000 sale. So there's a number of steps there. Versus if you're selling something for $10, well, you can probably just have a pretty simple ad there that someone might buy from straight away. But either way, you sort of need to understand what is the core offering, like what is the product or service that you're going to be focusing on. And remember, for every campaign, it's one core offering and one ideal client, right? Those two are very important. And then we need to understand the specific problem, like what is it the problem that your customer perceives they have that your product is going to solve for them. So understanding that, now let's take a look at the campaign flow. So the workbook gives a couple of examples here. One is, so the advertisement, right, which leads to a website, which could be then an invitation on the website to conduct a free trial or get an information brochure. That could be a campaign. Okay, now that campaign would be designed for you to generate leads, right, that you could then follow up with by phone or in person to then convert to a sale after that. Or you've got example number 2. This one's for a tire retailer. So the ad takes them to a website where they look at the range, select what they need, book an appointment online, and then they turn up and make a sale. So that one's actually making a sale straight from the website. The ad leads to the website makes a sale, books them in, and they come into the store. So take a moment now and think about what is the core offering you're going to be focusing on. Who is the ideal customer that you're looking to match up with that core offering? And then what are the steps that you need to walk through? In your workbook there's room for you to write that out. So have a look. There's at least 3 steps usually that someone has to follow. Could be as many as 10. I'd suggest for your starting point, look at somewhere between 3 and 5 steps for that person to follow to execute on or take the action you're looking for in your first campaign. So go ahead and have a crack at that. So now you've got a draft of what the steps might look like. And don't be too concerned if at this stage you're not crystal clear on that. That might become more apparent as you work through the rest of this module. You can certainly go back and refine it. And I should mention, setting up that workflow, the campaign flow, it's a bit of test and measure too. What you think might make sense, out of the gates, you might test that and find out people are falling off at a certain stage. Let's say your ad drives people to your website. From the website, you're looking to make a sale, and then you drive lots of people to your website, but the sales don't happen. So now you know, okay, I've either got to change my copy on my website, or maybe I need an extra step in there. Something needs to change in the process. And that's really the benefit of understanding your campaign flow, so you can test and measure what's working and what's not. So now let's look at how do we actually design the ad. If we're using that case, the ad driving people to your website, how do we design the ad to be effective? So this is where we look at the 6 core ingredients. So you've got your ideal customer and your core offering. We've talked about that. Probably the most important part, not the most important, but probably certainly one of the really important parts is the next one, which is the specific problem. You see, everyone acts in life because of emotion, right? Emotion is the driving force behind all of your behavior, all of your customers' behavior. And the 2 emotions that are key are the pain and pleasure emotions. So we're making decisions to do things to move away from pain or to move towards pleasure. We have to understand within our customer what is the emotion they have that they link to your product or service, or the reason why they're going to buy from you. Now, in some cases that's going to be pain-based, in some cases it's going to be pleasure-based. And it's going to depend on what you're offering and the experience your customer has or the problem they have that they want to fix. Right, if it's a pleasure-based, it might be, say if you're selling a vacation, right, that can be a pleasure-based sale. You're painting the picture of what it's going to be like for them, what they're going to experience, the food, the activities they're going to do, who they're going to be with. That's a pleasure-based sale. Let's say a pain-based sale might be some medical need. Let's say there's an example in the workbook of a physiotherapist, someone who's got chronic back pain and can't sleep. Well, that's a literal physical pain that we need to talk in the language of the customer. So there's a section here in your workbook that talks about, right, describing the specific problem. So have a read of that and you'll see, okay, there's one for the auto repair shop saying, they're not going to lie in bed saying, gee, where am I going to get my 17-point winter tyre check done? They're thinking about, is my car going to be safe this winter? Physiotherapy, they're not thinking about, gee, I need to get some acupuncture done on my lower back. They're thinking, the thought process they're having at 3 a.m. is, my God, I can't sleep. This is driving me nuts. It's driving me crazy. Okay, we've got to tap into that language. I can't sleep, it's driving me crazy. That language is the language that needs to be in the ad, because that's the language that your customer is going to identify. If you have a headline that says, experience the pain relief of acupuncture, they might not identify it. But if you talk about the 3 things you need to know to alleviate excruciating back pain, okay, someone's going to read that because they're going to really connect with excruciating back pain. So take a look now in your workbook in that section, and the work at the spot for you to do your work is on page 10 there. Take a look at and write down some ideas around what are the specific symptoms and language that your customer is experiencing relative to your product and service, and it has to be written in their language, right? Take all the technical jargon out unless your customer is a technically minded person and they understand it, right? If you've got a software solution for engineers, they're going to understand some of the language behind that. But you still want to put yourself in the shoes of your customer and talk in their language, and that's what you need to write down in the specific problem. What is their specific problem that they're lying awake at 3 a.m. and what's the words that they're using to think about that problem? Go ahead and write that down now. Okay, you're ready to start looking at headlines. Our next component. So our ideal customer, core offering and specific problem are kind of like the ingredients that go behind a campaign, a marketing campaign. We're now going to look at what are the physical components that you have to put in a campaign to get it out there in the marketplace. And there's 3 of them. There's the headline, there is the offer, right, how you're going to get someone to act, and there's the copy that you write in your ad. It's either going to be written or verbal or video. Now, the first one is the headline. So let's take a look at some marketing fundamentals here with the AIDA principle. AIDA principle. People pronounce it different ways. And that is AIDA. Now what this stands for is, for your marketing to work, it has to do 4 things. Firstly, it has to get their attention. Got to get their attention. This is either the vehicle it's delivered in, it is quite often the headline, particularly if you're doing print, it is always the headline, that's the attention. If you're doing direct mail, it might be the package it comes in. All right, but then as soon as you get someone's attention, you've got that for about 3 seconds. And then you quickly got to do the next step, which is engage them through generating some interest. Right? What you write has to be interesting to your customer. So maybe your attention attention getter is a headline, and we're going to talk in detail about that in this part of the video. Then a subhead might generate some interest. Or those first few lines of copy has to really hook them in. Right? You can't have an awesome headline and then have just fluff below it. You've really got to hook them in. So that's interest, and then the rest of the ad, or the rest of the marketing piece, has to build up some desire. Right, this is where we're really trying to tap into the emotion of your customer, because they have to have an emotional experience in reading your marketing. It's because when you present them with an offer, you want them to act. All right, take some action. This is a classic 4-step formula that all effective marketing follows. Whether it's a Google AdWord, whether it's a billboard on the side of the road, whatever it is. Right, it has to follow this. It has to get their attention, generate interest, build desire, and then ask people to take action. So the first part of that is the headline. Now we've got several things in the workbook here to help you generate some headlines. We've got some examples here of different headlines. We've got some templates here, template tool. You'll create your headline generator here, a bunch of different templates. Have a read through those and you'll start to get a feel for what a good headline looks like. You'll see these headlines, they're very specific, right? You've got to make sure you use your identity title of the person you're talking to so they can identify who they are. And then we're being very specific too in our problems that we're talking about in the headline and the core offering. Core offering is not really mentioned in the headline because 9 times out of 10 your customer is not going to know exactly how the core offering relates to their problem. Sometimes they will. That might be applicable, but really this is where you're going to think about the language that's relative to your customer, your prospect, and putting that in your headline. There's also some powerful proactive headline words and phrases here for you to look at. These are words that if put in your headline, they're attention grabbers. They're ones that people are attracted to. They're powerful words. So using the template, using the headlines and the sort of power pack words and phrases here, start to take a look and brainstorm out half a dozen different headlines. What does it need to look like? What are some options for you? And play around with it, and you'll start to get a sense of a headline that really has some punch, really gets their attention. You've got to be thinking when your ideal client is glancing through the newspaper or glancing through the web and they see that short as it has to be, long as it has to be, short as it can be, headline, it's going to think, oh, that's me. I need to read on, right? That's what it needs to do. So take a crack at that and let's see how you go. Step 5 in developing your campaign is now around the offer. So the headline is getting their attention and possibly their interest as well. Desire we're going to come back to when we look at copy, but right now we want to look at the action part of our AIDA principle because that's the offer. Now in terms of importance of these components, the headline is the most important, your offer is next important, and copy is the least level of importance in terms of the 3. Now why is that? Well, because if you don't have a good headline, and that doesn't matter how good your copy is because they're not going to read it, they're not going to see it. The headline has to it has to get their attention. The offer is so important because often some people won't be bothered to read all your copy. They're going to go straight from headline to offer, make a decision and go, or they're going to look at the headline, the offer, and if that offer looks enticing or generates some more interest, they're going to go back and read your copy. And that copy then has to be supportive to help build more desire, and then they're going to go ahead and take action on the offer. But the offer is very important, and in fact, when you're developing your marketing, simply playing around with your headline and your offer can be the difference in a successful campaign compared to one that's not. So this is a really important point when you go out and you draft, because you're going to do your best work to write the right headline and craft up the best offer, at the end of the day, the market is the one that tells you if you're on track or not. So don't be too upset if you put your first effort out there and it's not successful. All that means is we've got to go back and try a different offer or a different headline to be able to work out which one's working, which one's not. In Module 3, when we start looking at Google AdWords is a great vehicle to start testing and measuring different headlines and different offers. Because you can test so quickly and measure so well, keep that one in mind when you get into Module 3. But right now, we want to look at offers. So in your workbook, we've got a page here that talks about offers, and there's a couple of key criteria that dictate how successful an offer is going to be. The first one is the level of perceived risk. Like if someone perceives that there's a high level of risk to take action on your offer. I talked earlier about having a $30,000 product that you're trying to sell from an ad. Well, if that was the ad, if there was a headline, whatever it might be, and the offer was to buy this $30,000 product, that's a high level of risk for someone to take, particularly if they don't have a strong relationship with you already. So we really want to have a look at what is the level of risk you're asking someone to take. To get something for free, no risk at all. If you're getting information or coming into your store to get something for free, well, that's easy. Look, the next one is the quality of relationship that you have with them. These two go hand in hand. The more they trust you or the more they know you, the higher the level of risk that can be tolerated because the trust is already there. If they don't know you at all and there's zero trust, then the level of risk to take up the offer, it must be low. It has to be low in order to get them to take some action. Then we've got the level of interest or the burning desire around someone taking the action. Right? They might trust you, there might be a low level of risk, but they have no real interest in what you're offering. So you have to offer something that has a high interest to your ideal client. High interest, low perceived risk, and a good relationship is going to invoke some action. But then we've got two others. The perceived value of solving their problem, kind of like the level of interest. Those two are tied in. The last one is the perceived level of scarcity. They might see something that's of huge interest to them, and they see no risk in doing it. But if it's available for the next 5 years, well, there's no rush to do it, right? Why act now? I can do it later, right? When maybe it's more convenient. But if they've only got 2 weeks to act, well, that's a different story. So you can see how those 5 components there are very influential in getting someone to take action or not. There's a couple of examples in your workbook there. We've got 3 examples for different types of actions that you're trying to drive people to. So the first one is information and education. The second example is a special feature. And the third one is driving them to an event. Okay, there's a couple of examples, and a fourth one there, an offer around building your database, or a strategy around building your database quickly. So have a read of those 4 examples there, and then go ahead and in your workbook there's a section to draft some offers. So you'll see there's 5 spots there to draft your offer, and you might be saying, well, guys, we just need one offer, don't we? We do, but like any brainstorming exercise, you're probably not going to come up with the best offer the first time. So write out 5 of them, or more if you can, and then come back and score each one against the little test your offer section here. So on a scale of 1 to 10, you're going to rate each of your offers on these 5 components. So the first one, the level of perceived risk. Right? If there's high risk, that's going to have a low score. Right? If it's low risk, it's going to have a high score. Quality of relationship between you and the ideal client. Great relationship. They already trust you. That's going to have a high score. The reverse is true if there's no relationship there right now. Level of interest or desire for your offer. All right. If there's high interest and desire, it's going to have a high score. That one's sort of hard to gauge because some people are going to be different. Some customers are going to be different. They're going to perceive it differently. But put your best guess forward there. These two, though, the perceived value of the offer. Put yourself in the shoes of your customer or your prospect and try and look at it from their perspective and gauge it that way. And the last one, the perceived level of scarcity. If there's a higher level of perceived scarcity, then it obviously is going to have a high score. So when we talk about perceived scarcity, We're not talking about, creating scarcity by lying about what's available, what's not. We've only got 6 left, right? Well, if you've got 50 left, don't use that because it's not honest. But you can create scarcity around time frames for sure, or you can create scarcity around your wording. You can say that event people do this all the time. This will sell out fast. Be sure to book on the early bird before X date. All right, that creates a level of scarcity rather than just saying book by this time, because you've put that wording in there. So you can really play around with it, but you need to have all 5 components there to have a successful offer. So go ahead and craft your drafts there of each 5, test them against the criteria, and then come back and choose your final offer to test. You have your headline and you've got your offer. Now we need to fill in the last component, which is the copy. And the copy is really the content that you've promised them in your headline. You see, most of our headlines are going to be like the template tool we've given you, the 3 massive mistakes that, or the 3 myths that, or the 5 secrets about. So you're promising them a specific number of information points, or education points as we call them. And so in your copy, you have to deliver on what those education points are. You have to talk about them. Now, so what we've got is, for each of your education points, there are 3 things that we have to talk about. There is firstly the what. So what is the education point? And let's look at the example we have in the workbook here. So if we've got the business of a bookkeeping business and accounting firm, their ideal client is a small business owner with less than 10 employees. The core offering is monthly bookkeeping service, and the specific problem is stress because of inconsistent cash flow. We might have had a headline like, the 3 massive mistakes business owners make that keep them stressed and frustrated by inconsistent cash flow. If that was our headline, we've promised them 3 things that we're going to tell them. So we have to tell them that. And that's the what is the 3 things? Well, the example here, okay, the first education might be to always have the current on the key financial numbers that drive cash flow. So knowing the key financial numbers that drive cash flow is the what. That's what we've got to tell them. Knowing the key numbers is the what. Now the second thing that we've got to do for them is we've got to tell them why that is important. Why is that important? Well, did you know that knowing the 3 key drivers to cash flow, what do we promise them here? Well, we don't go into detail there, but you might say that is important. Knowing the 3 key cash flow financial metrics, did you know that knowing those and tweaking them can cause you a 10% swing in cash flow by a 3% change in those numbers? Right, so now a business owner can see, okay, I've got to know my key numbers. I need to know them because a small change in them can impact my cash flow significantly. And we've got to tell them one last thing. And that is the how. Now we're not going to give away the farm here, but we're going to give them some specific tips or insights that they can actually apply right now. So we're actually educating them and giving them some value right there on the spot. Now by doing that, we are, one, providing value so they associate us with someone who is known, we know what we're talking about, we're an expert. We're giving them some value right away for free, so that's a good thing. And the idea here is that whether you got 1, 3, 5 or 7 education points, each of those education points lead and ties into your offer, right? So you might educate someone on the 3 massive mistakes a business owner needs to know about inconsistent cash flow. You tell them what the 3 things are, and then your offer might be to download our free assessment tool or to contact us for a free one-on-one consultation. Right, your offer ties into that. So someone reads that information, they're reading it because they've read the headline, they read the copy and they get educated, and the education should also help them to understand they need you in some way. Right, you've just given them a small portion of the education, you haven't given them the whole enchilada. And most times it's impossible to give the whole enchilada anyway. Like if you take a physiotherapist, you might educate them as to why they've got pain or what the problem is, but they still definitely need you to be able to fix it. So then we do that with writing our copy out, and that leads them to the offer at the end. right? And that offer, as we've already been through, if it fits the 5 criteria well, is going to lead them to take action. So in your workbook, you've got space there, up to 5 of the education points to go and expand on what you've got. Now you might be thinking, but Jamie, I'm not writing this out, I'm actually going to be doing a radio ad, or I've got a Google AdWords, I'm only going to amount for a small amount of copy. And that's fine. I mean, if you go back to what your campaign flow was, the different steps, you'll understand how much copy you actually need depending on the vehicle you've chosen to use. But what we suggest doing is fill this out in a fair bit of detail, because the vehicle you choose is going to dictate how much copy you can actually put in there. And you can always use this in different methods. Say you might want to create a white paper where you're going to use all of the copy that you're going to write out here. A white paper is an information piece that someone can download from your website. If you are doing a radio ad, you might have a shortened version of your copy. You might not be as elaborate as what you're going to write out here. If you are directly into a landing page, you can put a lot of content on a landing page as long as it's good. I mean, whenever you're doing content, you don't want to ramble. It needs to be concise, or the rule is make it as long as it needs to be, but as short as it can be. And that's kind of the rule there. So have a go there. Whatever headline you've picked, whether it's 3 or 5 education points, go ahead and flush those out, and then we can show you how to bring it all together and select some vehicles. So now you've gone through and you've created all the major components for a campaign. So really, if you look back at everything you've done so far in the workbook, you've got all the components you need to be able to choose your vehicle, put a campaign together and go to market and start testing, measuring your results. But look, just to summarize, let's run through it here. You've done each of the 6 steps, which is the first one is looking at which core offering you want to sell more of. Okay, that's which product or service you want to sell to the market. And you've got many of them, but you've chosen one for this campaign. And likewise, for your ideal customer, you've chosen one. So second component, ideal customer. So we know that for every campaign, for every campaign, we have one core offering and one ideal customer. Even though you've got many, we've got one of each for a campaign. Then number 3, we've thought about, if we just go to this customer and we tell them how good our product or service is, the connection is probably not going to happen, because we know we're dealing with 67% of the market who is either unconscious, aware, or open. All right, we need to educate them. So we've got to talk to them in a language they're going to understand, which was their specific problem. Specific problem. Okay, now these are the foundational ingredients. Then we've got to look at, okay, how do we actually write and communicate to them in a way they're going to understand? Well, the first thing we do is we've got to get their attention with our headline. Okay, so we've created a headline, and you've got headline templates there, so you can create lots of different varied headlines. Headlines that are going to get their attention, invoke interest, and then we're going to understand what sort of call to action we need to have with a powerful offer. And you've got the criteria there, which constitutes a great offer. All right, you got the test there, and the last one is we learned how to write our copy. Now, how we use all that is going to depend on the vehicle that we want to choose. You'll see in your workbook there, got a short introduction to a list of the various vehicles, which you also got introduced to in the first module with the vehicle checklist, the introduction section. And the next module, we're going to do a lot of detail, modules 3, 4, and 5, on the top 7 strategies we're going to use. Google AdWords, referrals, strategic alliances, print, like your flyers and newspapers, and yellow pages, directories, all that sort of cool stuff. So by all means, if you're ready to go and you think you've got an idea now to go to market with what you've created in this module, go ahead. Otherwise, go ahead to module 3, 4, and 5 and check out those components there. All right, we look forward to seeing you on the call.